morning, everyone. Bubble and Bonnie here, ready to share a Bubble and Bible story with you. Hopefully, it will fill you up with good news. The story is about how much Jesus loves children. He even yelled at the disciples who tried to keep the children away from him. This is such an important message that 3 out of the 4 gospel writers named Matthew, Mark, and Luke share this story in the Bible with us. It's not a very long story, but wow, it's valuable because Jesus wants us to know how much children mean to them. He even tells the whole crowd of adults that they should be more like a child to belong to God's kingdom. I hope you enjoy today's story, which comes from Matthew 19, Mark 10, and Luke 18. During the time that Jesus was traveling from place to place, sharing stories about how to follow God and how we can show love to one another, a family heard he was going to be traveling through the area near where they lived. The dad said, "I heard around town that the teacher, the man they called Jesus, is going to be traveling nearby on his way to Jerusalem." "Wow," said the mom. "I've heard so many amazing stories about him." She started to list them. He healed a blind man, he made a man walk who couldn't, and he even raised a girl from the dead. While the mom and dad were talking, the children were overhearing this, all about this Jesus guy. "He sounds awesome," they thought. Then Jesus said, "Yeah, I've heard those stories too. I've also heard he's an inspiring teacher, and he tells all about the kingdom of heaven." I would pop with glee to hear him speak. "So would I," said the mom. "Let's go." "What about the children?" said the dad. "We can't just leave them home alone." The mom said softly, "Actually, I was hoping we could bring our children with us and ask Jesus to bless them." The next morning, they packed a big lunch and took a long journey to where they heard Jesus would be speaking. As they approached, they noticed others had brought their children hoping for a blessing as well. There was already a huge crowd, and the families with the little children were all the way at the back. Everyone was trying so hard to hear what Jesus was saying. The disciples were trying to get the crowd to be quiet so they could learn from Jesus. The mom pointed through the crowd and asked the children, "Can you see Jesus?" When some of the disciples saw the children trying to push through the crowd and heard the noise the children were making, they went over to their families and said sternly, "Jesus, our teacher, has so much work to do. All of these adults are trying to listen and learn from him. You need to take your children away." The mom pleaded with the disciples, "Please, we've come all this way. We were hoping Jesus would bless our children." One disciple shouted at the parents, "He's too busy to chat with children. Take them home." When Jesus saw and heard the disciples, he called to them and said, "Let the children come to me and do not stop them." The children joyfully burst through the crowd to Jesus' side. Then Jesus took his time to lay his hand on each of the children and bless them. Jesus turned to the crowd and spoke with all the kids gathered around him. Children are so important to God. They belong in God's kingdom. In fact, it's better to be like a child in God's kingdom. Remember, God's kingdom is all about loving and sharing. You can learn from a child how to be joyful and caring, and that will help you be a better part of God's kingdom. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. What wonderful news! Being a child is great. And adults, we should try to be more like a child because that's what Jesus wants us to do. So I encourage all of you to find more ways to be childlike this week. Maybe play some games, enjoy outside time, and have fun. See you next week.